privilege. Privilege is where we would end this morning. And so let me just kick off then by just ripping the Band-Aid off and just saying that the word privilege is such a loaded, right, and such a contentious word within our South African context. And so perhaps some of us, for all sorts of various reasons, may then choose to adopt a posture that does what? Avoids the discussion altogether. Or perhaps some others of us may actually feel like, man, this issue of privilege is a bull we must grab by the horns and wrestle down because it is such an important topic within our context that we must speak about it at all costs. And so wherever you may be sitting in that sort of kind of spectrum, it is a topic, it is a subject that just makes us apprehensive in particular. But it never has to. Never has to. Don't have to ever get apprehensive when we talk about privilege, especially when we approach it with spiritual maturity. Never has to make us apprehensive. Why? For the existence of privilege in of itself isn't something that should get you apprehensive, especially when you believe in God's common grace. What do I mean by God's common grace? It is the belief that our God, in general, just by way of his general posture, he is good to his creation. There's a God who is good to his creation. And so out of that common grace, he bestows upon humanity so much blessing, plurality of blessing, that we haven't deserved. But he bestows it out of his character, out of his goodness towards us. And so to think ourselves as benefactors under God for graces we have not deserved is actually a welcomed biblical idea that we should never get apprehensive about or resistant towards. And so James 1, the Apostle James tells us, do not be deceived, brothers and sisters. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Every gift and every good gift that has come our way has come from the Father above, things that we have not deserved, such as the very breath we breathe, comes from our God, out of his common grace towards us. And so to be human is to benefit under certain graces, hence a privilege by God's grace and by God's providence. That's what it means to be human. And yet we mustn't also somewhat be dismissive of the fact that due to the brokenness and fallenness of our world, there are many people who are disadvantaged by certain factors in this world. And some of those factors would include human sin that are being caused by human sin among us. And so, as we come to this subject of privilege, as you think about it, especially both in the presence of God's common grace at work in humanity and the presence of sin of humanity, then there's two realities in some ways that we must all just acknowledge about life. The first one will be this, that there's always somebody with less than you. There's always going to be somebody with less than you. And so for every area of your life you feel less privileged in, there will be another area of your life where somebody may look at you and feel like your lot is better than theirs. And the second reality we must all just acknowledge is that there's always somebody with more than you. And so the reverse also being true. For every area of your life where you may feel like you have had more privilege, feel doubly blessed. There will always be another area of your life where somebody can look at you and feel like their lot is actually better than yours. And so there will always be somebody with less than you. And there will always be somebody with more than you. And so as we approach then the reality of privilege in the world, with spiritual maturity and insight, it actually leads us to discern that the real issue with privilege isn't whether you have it or not, but what you're doing with it in the eyes of God. The real issue with privilege is not whether you have it or not. You will have some. All of us will have some privilege bestowed upon us. And so the issue isn't whether you have it or not, but what are you doing with it in the eyes of God? And so when we don't acknowledge the privileges that have been bestowed upon us, and I'm not just talking about money or status or race, but the many privileges that can be bestowed upon us, when we don't acknowledge them, then we end up being ineffective and powerless in making use of them in a way that brings God glory. And so then don't allow your pride to actually blind you from seeing the privileges that you would have some that have been bestowed upon you. Nor allow your prejudices to keep you from using those privileges in a manner that brings God glory. Instead, use the opportunities your privileges afford you to maximize the significance and impact of God's glory in and through your life. That should be our posture. Use the privileges that are afforded you to maximize the significance, the impact of God's glory in and through your life. So why does she hesitate? Through self-preservation. Through self-preservation. What a waste that would have been, right? If that went on. Now again, someone may raise an objection here and say, sure, buddy, isn't that maybe perhaps an unfair representation of what had been going on? Because wasn't she in danger of losing her life if she went to the king unsummoned? And so it feels justifiable to us, right? That out of fear of losing her life, that she chose not to do anything in it. So we get that, right? We all can get that as a reason. But here's where, friends, we got to actually see the underlying depravity of self-preservation in how then it leads us to actually squander the opportunities of our privilege. And it is this, that self-preservation makes you unwilling to lay down your life, even if you must, for the sake of others. That's ultimately what self-preservation will do. Make you hesitant, resistant, unwilling to lay down your life for the sake of others. For here's what else we get, every single one of us, right? We can get how disappointing and heartbreaking it is to turn to that one person you knew or felt could help you in a particular situation. And they turn around and say, no. Have you ever been shattered by that before in your life? Where that one person you know has got the ability to actually help you. He or she can help you, but they choose to not get involved in the situation. It is heartbreaking. It is disappointing to have happen in our lives. Now, they may have had a good enough reason for why they said no, and so let's not rule that out. But imagine had Mordecai at that point, when Esther said, sorry, I don't know that I can get involved in this, chose to walk away, which we all can understand, like we have done before, right? When that person says no, we choose to walk away shattered in that situation. And imagine that Mordecai chosen to walk away at that moment. What would have happened to the Jews across the Persian Empire, including the children and the elderly? Every single one of them would have gotten slaughtered. That's what would have happened if he chose to walk away at that moment. And so then imagine now being Esther, when you see that happen. Will you feel justified in that moment to say, whoa, I couldn't have risked my own life to try to save all those people? So holding to such a posture or justification or justifiable position, doesn't it seem depraved in the face of such an outcome, right? And so I think most of us wouldn't dare, right, in the face of that kind of an outcome, to use self-preservation as an excuse for not having gotten involved in something, right? Inaction at that moment seems too depraved to be a part of. And so then listen, friends, what is the most self-justifying reason in the world for you not to get involved in something you should have gotten involved into? It is what? How that was going to negatively impact on you. That's why you choose not to get involved, because of the negative impact. In other words, self-preservation. Self-preservation. And the greater the negative impact, the more likely we are not to step in where we should and choose action through the opportunities that our privilege give us. And so then, listen, like self-preservation. Self-preservation makes us unwilling to lay down whatever we must in any process. Utilize the very opportunities that our privileges are affording us for the good of others. Laying down our lives if we must for the sake of others. But John 15, verse 13 says this, that greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his or her life for his friends. Those were the words of the most privileged human being to have ever walked on this planet. And it is the God-man, Jesus Christ. Fully God and fully man. Jesus held a position that gave him certain powers and opportunities as he walked among us. And yet never once did he prioritize himself or choose to self-preserve with the power and opportunities he had. He made use of every single one of his privileges, of his time, of his talents, of his treasures, to lovingly serve those around him. So much so that he went all the way and laid down his life in sacrifice for our redemption. All by God's providence. And so Jesus didn't just say those words, but he lived them. No greater love has anyone than this, that a person, a man who laid down his life for his friends. He lived it as an example for us to follow. And that is why he goes on to say in verse 14, you are my friends if you do what I command you. If you do what I command you. And so here's what essentially Jesus is saying to us. He's saying, listen, reflect that you belong to me in how you embody the way in which I used the privileges that I had.